Well, happy holidays to you folks. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving. This is our first show back after the holidays. Thank you for tuning in. And what you might ask is, what is on the menu for this edition? In 1983, there was a TV finale of one of the greatest TV shows of all time. But you have to ask yourself, where was its starting points, its beginnings to this great TV series? And most people don't talk about this. But we're going to look back at the original theatrical film where this started at and how it continued. And on my video shelf, we will continue and look at the TV series itself and also a couple of the spin-offs. All this and more, including what is on Spenguli this week on the next edition of Saturday Pre-Flight, and it's just starting right now. Well, once again, welcome to another edition of Saturday Pre-Flight. Hope you've enjoyed your Thanksgiving. Hope you didn't eat too much. Hope you saved me a little bit of leftovers, or at least a little bit of the dessert. I do appreciate that. Also, don't forget to subscribe, like, share this video, hit that notification so you'll receive all our notifications here on Cuticast TV and Saturday Pre-Flight. So we have a lot going on this edition. We are taking a trip back to the Korean War on Saturday Pre-Flight this week. And it is a good TV series we'll be discussing tonight. But before we get into this, you may ask yourself, what is going on? We're going to take a little quick jump on what is the quick news for this week in the Fast Five.
법 체계가 정말 정의롭다고 생각하세요?
사격 개시!
There is no coincidence, only fate. And Watanuki is about to find out what his is. People know me as Yuko Ichihara. That is, of course, an assumed name.
There's always hope.
I need your help. I'm asking you to save the world.
Hey, you been working out?
Yeah, thank you for noticing.
Did you think I'd forgotten you? Perhaps you hoped I had. When the money's coming your way, you don't ask any questions.
To achieve it. Imagining yourself a hero. Then what are you waiting for?
From 1950 to 1953, the U.S. was involved into the days of the Cold War in the Korean War, which basically was trying to fight communism. A lot of issues that were going on in Korea at the time, which today you look at the perspective that, Korea is split into North and South. And, you've heard these situations of the issues that are political issues that are happening in the North Korea, all the problems, the politicians, and the way the people who try to leave this country and tell the nightmares that they've gone through in this country. Now, we could sit here and do a historical backlog of the Korean War, but in a way, we can look to the perspective that television at the time was growing. In 1968, a novel was written called MASH, a novel about three army doctors written by Richard Hooks. A little bit later on, a director, Robert Altman, and writer Ring Lauder Jr. decided to do a film adaptation of this novel, which eventually became one of the greatest TV series of all time. The TV series alone lasted much longer than the Korean War itself, over 11 seasons, and is still touted to this day as far as a finale as being the highest rated finale in the US. We're talking over 105 million viewers who watched the finale of this great TV series. But the starting point for this series was a film that Robert Altman directed, which was a black comedy on the Cold War. And you're familiar, if you've seen it many times before on TV, the TV series alone, you know of MASH, which came out in 1973. But in 1970, Altman did this film, and it depicted of course, if you're not familiar with the premise of it, it depicts the unit of a medical personnel stationed in a mobile armored surgical hospital. And that's what MASH stands for during the Korean War. And this has a great cast for it.
Starring Donald Sutherland, Elliot Gould, Tom Skerritt, Sally Kellerman, Robert Duvall, Joanne Flug, Renee Aubergenois, Roger Bowen, Gary Berghoff, David Arkin, John Chuck, Fred Williamson, Indus Arthur, Tim Brown, Corey Fisher, Bud Cort, Carl Gottlieb, Dawn Damon, Tamara Horrocks, Ken Primus, Danny Goldman, Kim Atwood, Michael Murphy, G. Wood, Rick Nealon, and Bobby Troop.
Goddamn army.
Now, if you're familiar with the TV series, Gary Berghoff is the only cast member that basically came from the film and sort of moved into the TV series as the character Radar, which is he's a great character. I loved Radar in the series itself. Now the film itself, it's a little bit more darker than what they had on broadcast television. I mean, they did move the black comedy into the TV series itself, but the movie itself, when you look into the perspective and the way the characters were driven, different from what the TV series portrayed, you'll see the major differences, especially like Frank Burns, who's played by Robert Duvall. The character of Frank Burns in this is more religious in this, not more toward he's a major bumbler to the situation, a whiner, always complaining. This is a guy who's, the Frank Burns in the movie series is a guy who's always constantly praying to the situation, not liking the way his other surgeons are handling things itself. You have, with this version on there, there are two commanders that have been on the MASH series. In the film version, you have Henry Blake, but it's portrayed differently as well. That is played by Roger Bowen, and he just only portrayed it for the movie on there. Now, you're wondering who's playing what as far as the other characters. Donald Sutherland played Hawkeye Pierce. Elliot Gould plays Trapper McIntyre. Tom Skerritt plays another guy, Duke Forrester, which wasn't transposed into the series itself. I believe they had him a little bit as a back character on there. Sally Kellerman plays Margaret Hot Lips O'Houlihan. As I said before, Robert Duvall plays Frank Burns. Renee Aubergenois plays Father Mulcahy. John Chuck is in this also. He plays Captain Walter Walkowski. Also, another character that did transpose into the TV series, Carl Gottlieb, who played Ugly John. And also Gary Berghoff as Radar O'Reilly. Fred Williamson is in this film itself. but he is also replaced in the TV series as Captain Oliver Harmon. Can't say the nickname on there, but it's Throwing a Spear Jones, who's basically a football player in there, because there is a plot where there is a football challenge, a game that goes on in toward the middle to the end of the movie, which is really good. Also, Bobby Troop is in this. If you're not familiar with Bobby Troop, he was also in the TV series Emergency. He does have a small minor role in this movie. And believe it or not, Stallone is in here in the background. He's a soldier in the catering area on there. But you have to look very carefully for him. The whole thing and how this starts out is basically Trapper is just coming, and several other doctors are just coming to Korea for the first time to the 4077, and they're joining Hawkeye and everybody else. Of course, you have the standard shenanigans you will always have seen that has made the MASH TV series a fantastic TV series. There's some side stories in between, like dealing with latent homosexuality in there, impotence. There is a sort of a joke in there, a feast, reminiscing to the Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper. Of course, you can't have MASH without the romance between Margaret Houlihan and, of course, with Frank Burns, which the way that ends up is really, it changes to the premise to the point where when you see the TV series versus this, you can see the major differences on how characters are driven in the series itself versus the movie. And eventually when the character moves on or on there, you see how the differences on how it's handled when it comes to that point where maybe they might have to move on, or something happens where they have to change their situations. Now, one major difference in the movie to TV series is the Radar O'Reilly character. He's sort of secondary in this series, even though he has a better character driven in the TV series itself, whereas basically he is a part of the main cast, whereas when you look at the credits, Gary Berghoff is like way down on there, and surprisingly that he's one of two people that were kept on. Even with the pilot of MASH comes on, there were even more changes done, because what happens is when they did the original, when it became from movie to pilot, of course, obviously, you know the changes that were made, but there were even more changes made from pilot to traditionally the real true first episode of the TV series. Now, understand, at this time, this was at 20th Century Fox, and 20th Century Fox was in high gear with war movies at this time period in the 1970s. I mean, you had two of the greatest films in war history being done at this time, and that's obvious. And you know, MASH is being the third. Patton was going on at the same time, and Tora. Two films that are phenomenal. If you have not seen these two films, I mean, most people know Patton, but Tora is a fantastically edited film, really well done. Stuff like that you don't see. War films like this you don't see anymore. There have been articles recently that, you know, the war movie is dying out. That basically you don't get the type of war movies like Patton, Tora, Midway, Battle of the Bulge. You know, MASH is technically a war film itself, also from a dark comedy situation on there. And Altman, at the time, he was new to the business. And the one thing is that he didn't have credentials. He didn't really have credentials back then. to justify his unorthodox film processing and making. He also turned down a lot of films if he didn't, he didn't feel that he could create a good product out of it. He would turn something down, and he's, if it was going to be a film that is not going to be great, that he knew that basically if he shot this, it will not, it won't make money for the studio at the time. So basically, he stay away from that. And knowing that the budget with MASH itself, we're talking a budget of $3 million. This cost $3 million, and at the time, that was very cheap. Considering that Patton cost about $12 million back then, and Tora Tora was $25, and both those films did well in the box office. We're talking Patton at $45 million at the box, and $37.5 million for Tora Tora Tora. When you look at MASH with its $3 million budget did $81 million in the box office. I mean, this was a major hit at the time. And like I said, I highly recommend you seeing this. I mean, the darkness of this story itself, the original novel, Altman mentions that was pretty rough and pretty racist. I mean, he mentions on there. Same thing with Ring Lauder, mentions that on DVD commentary. I mean, you look at the only black character in here is the Fred Williamson character, the football player in this, and it's, some people say, well, you have this situation when you have only character. It's 1970s. And the thing about it is, when you look more to this perspective of war, was brutal at the time. It was very brutal. I mean, there is a subplot of one of the characters, which was a Korean, who basically gets injured and has to be operated on. And the thing about it is that this particular person dies on the table, and what you see on the dialogue itself in the novel is that they're playing cards while the body's being driven away in the background. Now, from the book to the movie version of it, a lot of the dialogue was trimmed out just to show the horror, in a way, the horrors of war. That you had, as when you hear the situation that MASH saved many people in the series, that they were a very good outfit, that their success rate was very high. But when you had a death to the situation, it was a death, and they had to move on to the situation. As much as it hurt them that this happened, and you've seen this with Alan Alda, the many times that, and this is why the series won so many awards, on how he focused on certain deaths in this series. From what I remember, there's an episode where he's beating on a soldier's chest, trying to get the heart to pump, and he goes, "You're not going to get another one." And he's yelling, "You're not going to get another one. You're not going to get another one." And one of the higher rank colonels was there, and he asked, "What is he talking about?" He says, that Hawkeye's always, fighting with death most of the time. He doesn't want another kid dying on his operating table. He wants to make sure that kids survive on there. Now, note the language, the situations on this. This is 1970s, and the one thing, and I've said this, many others have said this, Chris Gore have said this, 70s was a great time for filmmaking, because at this point, you have to remember, the abolishment of the Hays Code was happening at this time. Even though it took another decade to abolish it completely, and the MPAA was moving into it under the new Motion Picture Association codes, a film of this nature would have been forbidden to have been made. It would have been edited further down. Could you imagine if this film was out sometime after the war, during the late 50s, right at the, because you remember in the late 50s, this is when the Hays Code was being eliminated in the courts, but it took another, like I said, another 10 years before 10 to 15 years before the Hays Code was completely wiped out of the studio system. A film of this nature, say like if it was made in 55, wouldn't have seen the light of day. This would have not seen the light of day. If it did, it would have been heavily edited, especially the scenes talking about homosexuality, impotence, the sex scenes. There is a sex scene in the movie itself, and obviously some of the racism that occurs in the movie. I mean, you can't move away. People they want to eliminate this out of movies, and it says it was the time period. And if you look to the perspective that you have people out there that says we don't need to see this anymore. No, we do need to see this. We need to see this so we can understand why this happened, so we can move on and not let it happen again. We are allowing some of the same situations that happened during the Korean War, during the Vietnam War, during the Second World War, is starting to rear its head over us today here in 2021. There are things that are happening, and this is why I always mention this is Hays Code 2.0 that's going on right now in Hollywood and on broadcast television, and we're getting this also on social media. And you see this constantly. And to really delve into this, as far as censorship and all that, and most people don't realize, is that MASH was the first studio film to use the word, please excuse my phraseology, fuck. Yes, that's right. Fuck was the first time that this word was spoken in a movie. Most people, the Hays Code held that back. Hays Code, you could not say words like this in a movie. Now, as far as the soundtrack goes, and I always say kick-ass soundtrack makes a good movie. This has a good soundtrack. And of course, knowing, if you're familiar with war films and all that, you know that a lot of times overseas, if it wasn't on Armed Forces Radio, you heard renditions of certain American songs sung by Japanese or Korean singers. Songs like Tokyo Shoe Sunshine Boy, My Blue Heaven, Happy Days Are Here Again, Chattanooga Choo Choo, and so on. But there is one song that stands out in this, which is the main theme. If you ever watched a opening segment of the MASH TV series, everybody's familiar with that song. But do you know the name of the song? Do you know that it is written by Michael Altman, and it is Johnny Mandel? The song is called Suicide is Pain. Film opens. You hear the lyrics to the song. Now, understand, because broadcast television, you could not say the lyrics on television. Surprisingly, they were able to use the theme of the song in the TV series. Now, there is a scene in the movie where someone is trying to commit suicide, but in a black comedic sense, it's sort of done to the point where that person thinks they're going to get away with it, and people around him are helping him, but they're not. They're trying to save him, and meanwhile, the song is being sung in the background. The layers of this in the film is perfectly done. It is fantastic the way that scene holds. If you've seen that scene, you know how it holds to it. And, you know, you don't think it's at one point to see that as being a main issue in the film itself. That is a strong point for the movie. Most people brush it off as just being another part of the movie, but it is a very strong part. It's a very, very strong part. Now, the release of the movie, it did very well. Funny to the way, of course, the MPA rating for it was originally an R rating. There were some re-edits of this on variations that a lot of the surgical stuff, the sex scenes, some of the language was cleaned up on certain releases, versions of it. Mostly out now. You can see it in its complete format in the R-rated sense. It has been released on VHS, Betamax. It was released in other forms in the VHS line several times. There is a DVD, and I believe there is a Blu-ray version out there of it. Not the greatest transfer of it. It is of standard on there. This movie does need a full 4K restoration. You can get a Blu-ray for about $5 from this movie. It's available in a lot of places on there, including streaming. And like I said, it is a great film. Now, it had 5 Oscar nominations on there, 1 for Best Screenplay. It also had several Golden Globe nominations on there as well, 1 for Best Picture. The score was nominated as well at the Grammys. It's won many awards and nominated in many categories in different film festivals itself. As far as the critics themselves, they loved the film. 4 out of 5 stars on the original, Roger Ebert. You know, there were many others that have rated this. Even on Rotten Tomatoes, it has today a 84% approval rating on there. You know, a lot of people says, well, they could not make this movie today. Yes, they could. Yes, they could. If they had the will, the balls, as they say, to make this movie, it is possible. It is a great film. I would never want it to be remade, honestly. A film to this nature, this is something that should be in a museum, honestly. Honestly, this is a film that should be taught in filmmaking classes in film school. The way that this is done, the way Robert Altman did this film, for the budget that he had. I mean, think about in today's dollars. You know, when you do 2021, $3 million, yeah, it's a lot more money. But think about 1970s. $3 million is not a lot of money to make a film for that time period. And remember, there's no computers. We were using regular cameras, Kodak, editing and stuff like that back then. You know, today it's much cheaper to do a film, a proper film, than it was back then. You know, a lot of people says, oh, it's more expensive now. No, from a technological point, it's much cheaper. What has caused the high expense is the greed, the activism, paying actors to do certain movies way over the top and give them extraordinary payouts. And then suddenly certain people don't get paid properly. As we said with Bohemian Rhapsody, on another edition on Man with the Show, where basically the screenwriter didn't get paid. And in that time period, you had a lot of great other films at the same time. So, you know, this was a time where some great blockbusters were out. Love Story, great film on there. One of my mother's favorites on there. Airport, which was, the beginning of those disaster movies on there, which was another great film. So we had a great cast in this, some great music, great editing, filmmaking of this. So let's take it to the next step and check out what's on my video shelf as we continue the Robert Altman MASH film to TV retrospective. Well, off my video shelf this week, I bring to you a continuation of what we've been discussing tonight, the 11-season box set of one of the greatest, highest rated TV shows of all time, with 106 million viewers on the finale MASH. The sitcom itself, the dark comedy, starring Alan Alda, Gary Berghoff, Laura Swit, Jamie Farr, Mike Farrell, Harry Morgan, Wayne Rogers, William Christopher, Larry Lindell, David Olden Stiers, McLean Stevenson, and many others in this great TV series, from regulars to special guests. I mean, this is a great series. I mean, you've had strange characters in this series that, visiting characters, visiting soldiers, visiting patients. I mean, there are so many people that have been on this show, some of them starting out. A very young Ron Howard had an episode in this TV series, this great TV series. You also had the likes of David Graff, Jeffrey Kramer, Joseph Marr, Mako, John McIntyre, Ned Beatty, Jeffrey Tamborn, John Paneo, Shelley Long, Marcia Strausman, Roy Goldman, John Orchard, Edward Winter. I can go on and on and on. There was so many people that have been on this series. This series lasted longer than the Korean War itself. The Korean War was only 3 years. This lasted 11 years, 11 seasons itself. I mean, this series won many, many awards. I mean, there was even, as popular as this one, had a Smithsonian display at the museum. I mean, this is how popular this TV series was, and the movie itself. We didn't discuss the ending of the movie, and I just wanted to bring in there was a point where certain characters left to go home, the way that it ended to the situation. We didn't get that for 11 years in this series, but for some characters, some of them did leave early on. There were some situations, but nothing major to the point, but some characters did move on from the series. You had McLean Stevenson, which was a very sad, poignant episode on his departure. Whereas, if you've not seen it, basically he died on his way home from the war. You also had Wayne Rogers leave the series as well, replaced by Mike Farrell, which is B.J. Honeycutt. Larry Lindell also left the series, replaced by David Olden Stiers, which is Major Charles Winchester. And of course, one of the favorites on there, Gary Berghoff, who played Radar O'Reilly, did eventually go home, and eventually got a spin-off, a pilot spin-off that didn't do well, but was tried. He got one called Walter, which it kind of twisted away from the him going home, because the reason he went home was that his uncle died, and he went go home to help his family on the farm. But the Walter TV series, he became a cop, and also did appear in the sequel series After MASH as well. Now, right now, this is only available on DVD. It is a box set. Some of the box sets comes with the 1970s movie itself. I do recommend that right now, unless they do a masterful remaster of the entire series back to forward, including the movie. The movie does need, even though there is a Blu-ray version of it, it does need a restoration of it. Just recently, MeTV aired the finale episode, which drew the largest amount. I mean, still, no one has broken that record of 106 million viewers to a finale of a TV series. Networks would kill to have that kind of a rating once again on broadcast television. This shows you the differences now these days with broadcast television of that time period to today. When a TV series can get you 1 million, 2 million, 3, 4, 5 million people, that's average. But if a TV series is under 600,000 viewers, that's not a popular show. People say, well, you can't get numbers like MASH ever again. No, that's wrong. You can get those numbers again. You have to find the niche, the hook that will bring viewers day in, day out to watch these episodes. And when you come to a finale, as such a great finale, and get the amount of people to finish off this show, you have to agree. And the sponsors, they loved it. There were controversial episodes, obviously, on here. And the TV boards were on top of this constantly because of the language and everything. I mean, we've dealt with many things in this series, from racism to underage soldiers, to alcoholism, to prostitution. I mean, there was not an issue that was not taboo in this series. And to make levity to some of the situations worked out very well. But there were very dark episodes that would make you cry. I mean, just in the last episode alone, I think everybody cried on that last episode, especially the situations Alan Alda was going through with Hawkeye. I mean, the writing, how much more can I say about the writing? I mean, the writing is very, very good for a primetime show. Now, as I said before, there were spin-offs. Technically, there were 3 spin-offs to MASH. 2 were a failure. 1 didn't get out of the pilot. The first one they tried was Walter, which was basically, as I said before, that the Gary Burnoff spin-off, where he's working in St. Louis as a police officer. The second, which ran for 2 seasons and was okay, it was basically after MASH, and that one starred Harry Morgan, Jamie Farr, and William Christopher, which was basically them being back in the States working at a VA hospital, and they added some new characters and on that. One of the things on there is great seeing Klinger back on there, Jamie Farr. If you're familiar with what happened at the end of the series MASH, that he had stayed behind in Korea to help, that he had gotten married and he was helping his Korean wife find their family, her family on there. But they decided to bring the characters to the U.S. and work together and live, you see their lives on there. It lasted 2 seasons. It was okay, but it just didn't have the click. This is the one that became successful. Now, the thing about this is that, now at the time, CBS had gotten Richard Hooker and Don Brinkley and Frank Lixman to create this series. And it's based on one of the characters, Trapper John, who originally was played by Elliot Gould in the movie, Wayne Rogers in the TV series. But what they decided to do was to change gears a bit and hire a veteran actor, Pernell Roberts. And the main focus of the series, it's 28 years later after the war. And it is the only pretty much mention, there's some background for pretty much the first episode itself. If you ever watched the first episode of it, is any mention of MASH itself. But the rest of the series is just really that it is Trapper working as a chief surgeon at San Francisco Memorial Hospital, and the procedures and stuff like that. And it's a great series. As I said, 7 seasons on there. And it also stars the great Gregory Harrison, who was in the Logan's Run TV series, which basically didn't do too well. Charles Alan Siebert, Madge Sinclair, Brian Mitchell, Christopher Norris, Timothy Busfield, and Lorena Luff. It was a great series itself, which basically didn't steer too much into the MASH, even though there was a suit filed by one of the producers of the movie itself, Ingo Preminger, which basically he wanted I guess he wanted a producer's right onto there. Ended up getting some of the royalties of the series, about 25% of the royalties of the series itself. But like I said, it ran for several years, for 7 seasons on there, and it was the in a way successful point of it, even though it didn't really talk too much about the MASH series. It just basically followed Trapper in his life long after the war. So all of these are available for you out there. You can check them out on there. At the end of this presentation, you'll be able to see where you can find all these great hits, where you can buy them on DVD or Blu-ray, and you'll be able to enjoy it at home, because always remember, physical media, always get that first. You know, never download these or anything like that. Get them physically in your hand. If you want to watch them on streaming service, that's fine. You know, Hulu runs the MASH series on there. You could probably find the movies somewhere on one of the streaming sites as well. But to save this kind of product, I always recommend get it physically. Because there's going to be a time where basically they're going to try to cancel this one out. And knowing how things are going, there'll probably be warnings on the head of these this movie and TV series probably very soon. So that's what's on my video shelf for this week. Well, we've reached the most important part of the video. And that is you, the viewer. What is on your mind? What are you commenting? What are you mentioning this past week? This is from the comments that the last couple weeks that we've been off. So some of these are from our videos that previously has aired, and we do appreciate all of you commenting on this. We're going to get through all of these in the next couple of episodes on air. So let's start off with Mark Felix Abdul. True, to think that calling it an anime is preposterous. That's on the High Guardian Spice. There's more coming to this, I'll tell you this, Mark. I mean, we're just finding out, we're just touching the top of this. We have a video coming out discussing further some issues that there could be some plagiarism going on. I mean, this is not something where, you know, a lawsuit can come across, but, you know, sometimes when you think that they're trying to create something new, they're not. They're just ripping off something else and throwing in their politics and activism. That's all it is. All this is political activism. And we've seen this across all media, even in Netflix. You know, we saw Cowboy Bebop, a couple of other series. I was surprised. One of the biggest surprises to me was that Arcane didn't end up this way, the League of Legends series. But then again, season 2 comes out. That could change. Thank you again, Mark. Taipan Katayama. The fact that Crunchyroll even released it after all the backlash it got at the beginning was lunacy at its finest. They knew that the thing would be bad, and releasing it only made things worse for them. They should have just done the logical thing, scrapped the whole project, fired the crew, and actually fund anime in Japan. There are plenty of animes out there who could have used the funding like they said they would. I barely got through episode 3 and refused to watch the rest. It was just gosh darn cringy. It was like the writers didn't even know how to hold a conversation with an actual person. I'm more surprised that someone actually looked at the script, nodded, and said, yeah, it sounds good, let's roll with it. A sane person would have taken the script to the backyard of Crunchyroll Studios, doused that dung with gasoline, and burn it to hell where it belongs. Taipan, I totally agree with you with that. Note, this was shelved. Crunchyroll did shelve this. And notice it was released as soon as Sony completely got control of Crunchyroll. So Sony must have had 2 words on this situation. Now, as far as a second season, I don't think this is coming. Most of these people have moved on to newer projects since this took so long to put out. And I'm hoping they do not do a season 2 on this. There's a lot of issues with this. As I said before, I got a video coming out that, yep, there is some sort of plagiarism in one way. If you haven't seen it, there are some reports out there of it. How much of it has gone on there, we're just noticing it now because someone else put a comparison of another classic anime up against this. So, and replying to Taipan, Anubis C. Soundwave, contracts are likely the culprits. Crunchyroll had to release it or they pay breach of contract penalty. Anubis, they got paid. That's the thing about it. This thing was already funded 100%. Now, if they had a deal on the back end of some situation, that might have been the top producers to that and maybe the script writer. And if they didn't get paid yet, yeah, they should get paid, obviously. You know, nobody should be left out wherever they do it. But as far as releasing, Sony, when it comes to film, television, there is nothing that stops a major company like Sony from putting the product out. There are many films that have sat on shelves for many years. Perfect example, the Fantastic Four movie that was made many years ago. How many years did that sit on a shelf? And there are plenty of other films cross the line. Always remember, film company doesn't have to put it out. They could make it, pay whatever they wanted to pay on it, and still take a loss. And, you know, they'll just claim the insurance on it. Thank you again, Taipan and Anubis. Okay, now from, let's see how we can put this. People said my PFP is cursed AF, but why thou? High Guardian second season predictions. Rosemary was killed off in the first episode. Sage is getting botched haircut at the best friend's death. Writers force Parsley and Thyme to be a gay couple. Professor Carney being a Gary Stu Coos. He's the creator. Self-insert. People, I don't think they're getting a season 2, honestly. And yeah, you know, if they do a season 2, it will be way, way over the top. In that same comment line, Hertz Wave. From what I remember, the company was disbanded back in 2019, around the time this thing was supposed to have come out. And with Crunchyroll sale to Sony, I don't think there'll be a season 2. I agree with you, Hertz, 100% on that. JMaster94 commenting, source, I want to know where these people get this info from. No, it's been in the mainstream out there for quite some time, JMaster. The thing about it is, you have to remember, if you're working on a project, okay, and you complete the project, and the company decides, well, we're going to shelve it for 2 years. You're going to move on. You're not going to sit there to wait to see if there's going to be a season 2. You still got to make money. You got to work. They're not continuing to pay you while this sits on the shelf. They'll pay you for your work, and that's it. Until that TV series or movie hits, and whatever contract they have, if they have a back end, royalties or whatever else, they will not receive it until that particular product hits screens. Always remember that. It's something that's always been there. I've been in the industry a long time, and like I said before, there have been many movies and TV series that have been put on shelves, pilots that never went forward, and basically, most of these people have gone on. You can look it up. You can look it up on their IMDb's. Check their IMDb's out, and what are they doing right now? Thank you again, JMaster. Sarah also comments on this. I rather suspect that Sage and Rose in the second season are going to start having a crappy gay romance, because that's what our best friends end up as, a couple cliche. Sarah, if that's going to happen, I wouldn't be shocked at it. Arcane right now, everyone's trying to push that two of the characters, that they're going to be together and stuff like that. There are friend bondings, and people have to understand there's times when there's romance and times when people become very good friends, brotherly, sisterly. Doesn't mean romance. But in the case of High Guardian Spice, this is high political activism, and yeah, most likely they'll probably, if they ever do it, which I don't think they're going to do it, it most likely probably will happen. Pie Flinger, I love your review. Thank you, Pie Flinger. Thank you very much. We respect those of you who understand. We want things to succeed. But when you have people like on the staff of High Guardian Spice, where they say, well, we are, in quotations, we're diverse. And they're not diverse. Diverse doesn't mean that you throw a slew of women or a slew of one particular minority, working on there and say, that's diverse. It's like saying most of the cast of Black Panther, that's diverse. No, most of the cast is black. That's not being diverse. That's just basically being a regular movie. Diverse is like The Expanse. If you look at The Expanse, and they don't push that they're diverse. They were good series, and they had a good cast. That's being diverse. Thank you again, Pie Flinger. And finally, Carrie Amari, him. I was born into a female body, but that wasn't the right body for me, so I used magic to change it. Me? So you're using someone else's body that's why it sounds like. This is the crazy things when you hear these things, speaking to you, Carrie, and you're right with what you said there. If you look at the Cowboy Bebop and the one particular character they've been talking about lately, the character Gren, which they totally messed up on the live action. You look at the live action and not understanding, and I keep saying this, they don't understand the series itself. Gren was in jail, was pumped in with hormones and stuff like that, and he said, well, it's a trans, was forced to be the way Gren is in the series. Forced. Okay? This is not saying it's a binary, transgender. The stupidity of the situation, and this is the biggest stupidity, is they this is the lies that they will tell you. In anime, they'll say to you, there are no gay people. There are no minorities. There are no trans people. Not knowing, not realizing that there has been all of this long before anybody got to this position. Characters like this have been focused for many years out of Japan. Because Japan wasn't afraid to use these characters. They were not afraid to create a trans character. They were not afraid to have a gay romance in a series. As one person said, Chuck Dixon said, in anime and manga, there is something for everyone. You may not like every anime that comes out, but there is going to be an anime down the line you're going to say, holy shit, that's really good. I enjoyed that. Some of the things that I watch are not things that you might watch or you might not watch. Not everyone likes Mushoku Tensei. Not everyone likes 86. Not everyone likes ReZero. But that's okay. There are other things. If you're a sports fan, if you're a camper, if you're a fisherman, if you cook, you like to cook, you like cooking. There is cooking animes out there. There's tons of stories out there. And this is why the industry is overwhelming in the West. Because this is the failure of Hollywood and the comic book industry, because they have been perverted, corrupted, become political ideologists. This is why they are dying. This is the reason why they're dying. When you hear what you said, Carrie, it is basically straight on. People don't want to see that all the time. I said that article out of the Huffington Post. You know, people in the LGBTQ community, you know, don't want to see themselves all the time in a movie or a TV series. You know, they don't want to have someone say, hey, my name is John and I'm gay, or I'm John and I'm a transgender. That doesn't how it works. That's virtual signaling. Most people, most logical people in this world don't go by that. They don't take to this. And this is the reason why we criticize it. We want projects to work out. Leave the people that are inexperienced out of this business. There are better stuff on YouTube, and this is why network programming is getting clobbered by YouTube. Just to bring up something separate that has nothing to do with anime or manga. If you're familiar with the Rittenhouse trial and all that, one of the most popular streams out there was the Rekieta Law site. And the reason for that is that he had lawyers and former prosecutors discussing what was going on the feed. There were up to 130,000 on just alone on YouTube, over 130,000 viewers. That beat out PBS, MSNBC, and everyone else that was streaming on YouTube. They beat them out. The second one to come up close to them was a mix between Crowder and PBS. Those are the ones that got close. And not to take that Nick knocked out Odyssey. He crashed the Odyssey site because there was so many people running to the Odyssey site. That shows you. This shows you, and getting back to anime and manga and High Guardian Spice, this is what happens. There is tons of animation here, right here on YouTube, that's doing much better than what Crunchyroll puts out. And Crunchyroll lied to the anime fans. Straight, blatant lie. They said we were going to take the money that we make from you guys and put it directly back into Japan. No, they put it into their own pockets. That's why we had a story out this past week on a billion reasons why not to trust Hollywood, because you had a movie like Bohemian Rhapsody that scored about almost $1 billion, but was still in the hole for 51 and haven't even paid the script writer. How can you say that? How could you not pay the person who wrote the script for this award-winning movie? This is why we slam these projects. This is why we continue to slam them. We don't want to slam them. We want them to be successful. If they're successful, they're successful. It's like I said with Arcane. I enjoyed Arcane League of Legends. And I'm not a League of Legends fan. But I enjoyed the story. It was really dark and grim, and the characters were good. The only episode that just kind of crunched in, which people said is like a great episode, episode 3, it was kind of condensed of a lot of information. But overall, I passed on to that, and I continued with the story and finished it up. And I want season 2. I do want to see season 2 and what they do next. Let's hope they can continue the momentum. See, once you get this momentum, you got to keep it going. It's like The Expanse. This is why The Expanse did what it did, because they kept the momentum going. They didn't bother with the freaking activism. Carrie Amarai, thank you very much. And thank you to all of you who have commented, subscribed, liked, and shared these videos. One thing, it's very important. Once you're sharing this with other people, this helps us in the algorithm. This moves us up, because basically YouTube sees this as new. Every time you share it and someone else shares it, it moves it up in the ratings on there and continues to move it up. If you could just share it with 3 people, I would appreciate that. And that helps. And commenting, very important as well. The thumbs up, thumbs down is an issue now because you don't see the thumbs down counter on a lot of the videos these days. But that's not because of small YouTubers. That's for the corporations are basically want to hide their issues. So you may ask yourself next, what can I do to join in the conversation? Well, it's very simple. Below the video below the description, there is a comments section there. Whether you're on YouTube, Odyssey, or BitChute, just type away, be civil, keep the language to a minimum. Also, try to keep your comments within a parameter on there. I know you want to type away, and some of the lengthier ones are great, but we want to try to at least showcase this on shows like Saturday Pre-Flight for you. So we want to keep them as basic and simple as possible for everyone, because I know people will get emotional, and that's okay. It's okay. Whether you're mad, you're happy, you're sad, that's okay. You're allowed to express yourself, and this is one of the best places to express yourself, right here on Cuticast TV. So thank you all again. Well, 2 things before we go. Obviously, you're asking yourself, what is on Svengoolie this week on the first weekend in December? I mean, we had a great month last month. I mean, we had King Kong versus Godzilla. We had The Devil's Reign. So what are they starting off with this week? Well, let's check in with MeTV and find out what's going on.
This week on Svengoolie,
Cloud is splitting up. There are 4 of them now, and all moving this way.
Saturday at 8, 7 Central on MeTV.
Yes, that's right, folks. The 1958 movie, The Crawling Eye, or also known as the Trollenberg Terror. This is starring Lawrence Payne, Janet Murrow, Forrest Tucker, Jennifer Jane, Warren Mitchell, and Stuart Saunders. I'll tell you, this is giant eyes attacking. I mean, this is a really good movie. Even Mystery Science Theater 3000 has riffed this movie. It is a classic. I think the version that Svengoolie's gone in is a sort of restoration version. As you saw from the trailer that we put out, the trailer is one of the older trailers which hasn't been remastered yet. One thing when they do restorations on there, sometimes on the older films they don't do restorations of the trailer that much. Unless it's like a Criterion or if they're pumping money into it. Because I have a friend who does work with Criterion and a couple other companies overseas, especially in Japan, to restore, as they're putting out 4K and Blu-ray editions. They want the trailers to be remastered as well. So that's 8 p.m. Eastern on your local MeTV. You might ask yourself, where in the world can I get Svengoolie? Well, you could go over to MeTV.com, click on the area where you're at, put your zip code in, and find out where you can get it on your antenna or on your cable service. Now, note for those of you who've had some problems out there, there are some channel changes. There has been multiple compressions since the FCC has sold a lot of frequencies out. So you might need to get a new antenna or change the position antenna. The best thing to do is find out where your local MeTV station is located at. So at least you know the exact position of where their broadcast antenna is. And you might want to move it toward there or get something a little bit more stronger to handle it. There is a YouTuber named Antenna Man who can give you some advice. He gives great advice on there. As I've said in the past, never buy an antenna that says ready for K. Do not buy it, stay away, run away for it, because basically, technically, the technology is changing, and eventually we will have a higher definition source of broadcast. But the technology itself will be changing to adapt to the new frequencies. The antennas right now that are will only handle up to the highest level of 1080p that you can get on there. Because remember, most of these broadcasters aren't broadcasting in 4K. They are in high definition. Channels like YouTube here, yes, we are in 4K. And in some cases, there is an 8K situation on there. But when it comes to broadcast television, they haven't pushed forward yet. Because I think they're going to skip over and go to a higher resolution rate, which I think they are going to go to the 8K, which that's going to take a little bit more time. And as far as over the airwaves, there is something going on to increase the resolution rate, but that will need a change of hardware in your home as well as a change of antenna. That technology is still to come. Well, here we are at the end, and you may ask yourself, what is on next week? What is on the next edition of Saturday Pre-Flight? Well, in the last 2 episodes to end this year, we are going with a holiday Christmas theme for the next 2 episodes. And we have thrown together 2 good episodes themed to one of the greatest stories done by Charles Dickens, which is A Christmas Carol. But this will be shown as 2 separate. One's a special and another one is a full-length movie musical. And the one that's coming on next week is starring a great comedian who does great impressions. And in a way, this version of A Christmas Carol is a one-man show in a way, even though there are some secondary characters, kids and stuff like that around. But the main characters like Scrooge and the Ghost of Christmas Past and Future and all those characters that he's in, Bob Cratchit, are done by this one particular comedian doing impressions of particular characters that you may know from television and movie history. And here's a little clip.
Ebenezer Scrooge.
Don't bother. I didn't give it the office either. Who the devil are you?
Don't you recognize me? In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley.
Jacob Marley? Ridiculous. My Jacob Marley's dead. He's been dead these 7 years. As a matter of fact, he died 7 years ago this very night.
So that's Saturday Pre-Flight. Next Friday night, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific, on your local YouTube, BitChute, later on Odyssey. And once again, thank you for tuning in. Remember to subscribe, like, share this video. And don't forget to comment as well if you enjoyed this episode. And please stay tuned to the end as we do showcase where you could find these great treasures that we show episode to episode on Saturday Pre-Flight. Once again, thank you for tuning in. Happy holidays, and we will see you next Friday. Thank you for tuning in, and stay safe, and bye-bye now.